so many new pieces to this IU football team.
To me, that's going to set the tone on how you get ready for games on Saturday in the fall.
I would put that Indiana room up against anybody else in the conference, and that's something that we typically don't even come close to saying.
If you want to get total sickos committee about it, there's a position battle at long snapper too.
This is the Hoosier Huddle Podcast, part of the College Huddle Podcast Network.
Good evening, Hoosier fans. We have another episode of After the Dust Settles. Alongside me today is Nate Comp. Nate, you just put out a good Numbers That Mattered, which we'll get into in a little bit here. Indiana falls for the first time in the Curt Cignetti era. If you would have said it's November 25th and I would have just said that sentence, I would have thought you were either crazy or COVID hit again and every other team forfeited on IU's schedule. So Indiana's 10-1, still ranked as the number 10 team in the country in both the AP and the coaches polls. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. And you're still squarely, if not firmly, in the college football playoff picture. Nate, obviously not the way you wanted Saturday to go. There was a lot of buildup. There was a lot of hype, a lot of national media, a lot of people talking about this game, watching this game, and got off to a good start.
Yeah, got off to a very good start. Definitely felt like going into the game, you're already playing a little bit of defense of just trying to be like, yeah, we do belong here. Winning, it does matter, and it doesn't matter who's on your schedule. It's hard to win week in and week out. And I think everything that we saw after IU lost on Saturday kind of proved that elsewhere around college football. But yeah, I mean, you had to go into that game kind of thinking, just with the talent discrepancy, Indiana needed to be playing at its absolute best, and it wasn't playing at its absolute best this week. And that happens. I think you just kind of have to reframe and remember, our goals going into the season. I was like, maybe I'll go see a bowl game in Detroit. And now it feels like the floor of a bowl game is the Citrus Bowl, and that used to be my ceiling. So, yeah, it's all about perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think obviously some of the huge talking points from some of the national pundits and a lot of people that follow the sport were, IU hasn't played anybody, IU hasn't done this, IU hasn't done that. Sure, you say whatever you want, but these are traditionally teams and games IU hasn't won, especially hasn't won handily in honestly forever. But this was a chance to really make a statement. And I think there were some good things that we saw, and we'll definitely talk about that. It's not all doom and gloom. Obviously, you wanted to play better, you wanted to rise to the moment better, especially coming off of a bye week. And for me, that was kind of the most troubling part. Is you had a really, really good first half, especially on offense against Michigan, and then the second half really struggled, which is what we saw for a majority of the game against Ohio State on Saturday. So you figured coming out of the bye week with some tape on things you needed to correct, that you'd put together kind of a more cohesive, competent, complete offensive performance. Really not the case. It was the first drive for IU with the ball, and then that last drive that bookended the game in the middle of it, for the most part, was a disaster. So for me, that was disappointing. I think when you really look at the game and you look at the box score, and obviously a lot goes into the box score and all that kind of stuff, there are things you like. IU had more first downs. IU had more yards gained on the ground. I saw a lot of people being like, IU ran for 80 yards or whatever. Yeah, because in college football, they count sacks as rushing yards. So IU ran the ball for 100 and basically 60 yards on the ground, which if you told me that before the game, I said we would have been right in it with a really good chance to win. Both the running backs had good games. Justice Ellison had a solid one, but Lawton really ran hard. Those zone runs off the tackles were really good. He had 2 touchdowns as well. So running game I thought was good, but 2 weeks in a row now, or 2 games in a row, I guess, pass protection just not good enough, not even close. And you really saw Ohio State flip the switch after they dropped guys into coverage. They let Rourke have time in the pocket. He looked really comfortable on that first drive, completing a couple nice third down balls. And then from there, they said, all right, that's about enough of that. And blitzed pretty much until the game was over. But Nate, I mean, that's something that has to be corrected. We'll get into the Purdue game, obviously a game you feel good about and a game you need to win for a ton of different reasons. But looking beyond Purdue, which I'm sure the staff is not doing, I hope the staff is not doing, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be corrected on the offensive line.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we almost, with the bye week, I think I was expecting us to kind of come in extra prepared, like you had said. And I think we had seen what other teams had done. Like I watched the Northwestern game before when they played Ohio State. I watched some of the Purdue game when they played Ohio State. It felt like both of those teams came into the game with the mindset that they're just going to try to limit the number of possessions. If they have to run the ball every single play, they don't care. They're just going to try to keep the ball out of Ohio State's offensive's hands and just continue to pound the rock. And I think we came into the game kind of thinking we don't have to do that. We're better than Northwestern. We're better than Purdue. We're better than some of these other teams that Ohio State has played. So I think we kind of came in with the mindset of like we don't have to just do this. We can also flex our passing game. Rourke's been solid in the past. We've got great, weapons at wide receiver. I think we kind of came in thinking we're better than this. We don't need to just pound the rock. And now looking back on it, hindsight's 2020, but I kind of think I wish we would have tried to do that a little more. You mentioned how well the running backs played. That it just felt like in the middle part of that middle section of the game, after the not including the very first touchdown drive and the very last garbage time touchdown drive, it felt like in that middle part, it always felt like we were playing catch up, even when the score didn't necessarily dictate that. And so we kind of tried to rely on our passing game, and yeah, like you mentioned, they were feasting on our offensive line, and just had we couldn't give Rourke any amount of time, so we were constantly behind the chains, which forces you to pass even more. Where it felt like where we were having our effective offensive play calls was in the run game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and didn't love. I think I tweeted it out at the end of the second quarter at halftime, but yeah, I did not love, honestly, Shanahan's game plan for this one. I think the scripted drive to open after the defense gets a 3-and-out to start, you feel really good about that. Come back, go down the field, march down the field. I think it was like an 11-play drive, touchdown on 1st and goal, feeling great. And I think that was pretty much the point when Ohio State totally flipped the game plan, started bringing all the stunts, which is what Michigan gave us problems with. And that's really interesting to me because IU's defense runs those so much and so well that it feels like you have guys to go against and schemes to go against in practice to kind of get ready for that. But yeah, totally looked unprepared. I mean, Rourke got sacked 5 times. I think it should have been like 6 or 7. I mean, a couple times he literally got the snap and was on the ground.
Yeah.
Either turning around or falling down to not take a hit. He obviously got clocked on that one strip sack that led to a score. No, we picked it off after that. But yeah, I think offense really, really struggled. The last drive of the game was really nice, 7-minute drive to get another kind of optics touchdown. But yeah, I mean, offensive line thoroughly outclassed by Ohio State. I thought for the most part they held their own against Michigan, but that was really not the case, especially in pass protection on this day. Ohio State really dominated up front, at least defensively. But I thought IU's defense, for the hand they were dealt, which was a pretty crappy one, honestly did a really nice job.
Yeah, it felt like I had said this in our group chat at one point during the game. It felt like the field was slanted for the majority of the game, and we just continually put our defense in a spot where they were working uphill, or oh, sorry, you're within the 25-yard line, and
Right.
we really need the stop. And even if you do get the stop, we're going to put our offense back out there in a tough position, and you're probably going to be right back in it again.
Mhm.
And yeah, I was all right with the defensive performance. And I guess we haven't even mentioned yet, but like at some point we got to talk the other third of the game because it was an issue. Yeah.
I was trying to stuff it in the corner and forget about it, Nate, but as I'm looking at the rushing stats here, Tyson Lawton, 15 carries, 80 yards, 2 touchdowns, so 5.3 yards a pop, pretty good. And then Justice Ellison, 17 carries, 66 yards, for just under 4 yards a carry. So I mean that's solid. I use running backs. Top 2 guys did a pretty good job. But if you go further down the rushing stats here, you have Mike Kadich and James Evans showing up on the box score, which typically is not a good sign unless you're running some crazy trick plays or fake punts. But James Evans, obviously, end of the first half, IU's playing it pretty aggressive to try and score some points. Again, hindsight's 2020. Say whatever you want. Either way, James Evans drops a really good snap. Ball gets recovered at like this 7 or 8 yard line. Ohio State punches it in. And from there, the game really, really kind of shifted towards Ohio State's way. So, I mean, Evans has been solid on some pretty bad teams where he's got to punt a lot. He's been kind of up and down this season, but obviously a critical mistake for honestly what's been a pretty solid player.
Yeah, I mean, I guess our gripe can be we haven't used him enough this year, so he wasn't
Mhm.
ready or something. But no, those are both plays that he needs to make. It was a perfect snap. I think it hit him in the face. So like
Yeah.
you can't do much better than that, and it just completely put the defense in a tough position. And then yeah, you come out the second half, you're like, okay, maybe we get the ball to start, maybe we can go down and make this a 14-all game, kind of shift momentum back. We end up having to punt, and even with it bouncing 6 times, it felt like Downs was still able to take it
Yeah.
for a touchdown, and I mean, that really changed things.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you see that Evans wasn't supposed to punt it where he did? Did you see that Sig said
No,
that today?
did not see
So
that.
he in his presser today, he was like, "Yeah, we had it called to punt it to the right hash. Obviously, it went to the left sideline, so he was like." Basically our entire punt coverage went to the right side of the field and then looked up and the ball was coming at them at the other side on the entire left side, which left us completely exposed. And I think he finished it with something like, yeah, it was not a good day from that unit. They're going to need to be better,
Yeah.
which, yeah, that's very easy to sum it up like that.
Pretty accurate. And special teams, honestly, like we've been very high on them all season. You've had a couple games now, the Washington game and the Michigan game, where you've had IU with some big punt returns to kind of flip momentum. Kick coverage on both punt and kickoff has honestly been pretty good all year. And of course, Nico Radicic is still yet to miss a kick, knock on wood. So honestly, it's been a solid year, but in a game where the margins are so small, and I feel like that's kind of what we've talked about for IU teams in the past, right? Is when you're fighting so uphill, and I didn't really feel like this game was, as stark or as daunting as it has been in past years. You still have to play a really good game, obviously, to beat Ohio State, especially on the road. And giving up essentially 14 points from your punt unit, that's just not going to get it done. I don't care who you are, how well you're playing. That's a really, really tough hill to climb. So
Yeah, I think we
that
could have done
big
that in other
play,
games this
yeah,
season and would have been in big trouble. So yeah,
yeah.
sorry I cut you off.
Absolutely. No, I was just that was obviously the drop punt was a huge one. And then the punt return for the touchdown kind of really put the game firmly in their control. But one play that Signetti called out was late in the, I guess, mid second quarter. IU gets the ball, or no, this was in the first quarter. The
Talking
post false
false
start,
start. Yeah.
yeah, like the fake false start. Um, 3rd and 1, IU got the ball back after holding Ohio State on 4th and goal. Huge play, huge momentum swing as you're already up 7-0. Get a couple first downs, and you have a critical 3rd and 1. D tackle, clocks Bray Lynch, knocks him over. Whole IU offensive line's pointing first down. The D tackle is like laughing after they called it a false start. They call it on James Bamba, who it looked like he moved after he made contact. Then, of course, don't pick it up. and I think he got sacked actually.
Yep.
And then you punt, and then they eventually tie the game up. But that was a big play. I get it. It was not, in my opinion, the correct call. But I will say I don't love that that's the play he singled out as the one that shifted the game. I feel like there were a lot of plays and a lot of chances to kind of get the game back on track. And I feel like picking up a third and 1 in the first quarter from your own 20-yard line, I don't know if that's necessarily the play I would pick to be the one I would change. But it did feel like you had all the momentum at that point. But if you go down and score, even if it's 10-0, who knows? Obviously, I'm not saying you're going to win, but who knows how the game turns out. But what did you think, Nate? I don't love that that's the play immediately after the game he singled out. I thought there are obviously a ton of plays in a football game, but felt like there were other chances for IU to get on track, and they just didn't.
Yeah, I think it just got us. It once again got us into the point that I had mentioned earlier, where okay, we've got one of these 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1 type of plays where we've got the positive game script on offense, which was very rare for the entire rest of the game. So I can see the gripe where yeah, it did seem to flip things a little bit. Like we had momentum, and then yeah, the Ohio State defensive lineman's literally laughing because he's like, yeah, I got away with that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, when there's still what 48 minutes left in a game at that point, um, it's hard to say that that completely changes everything. Um, but that also, I don't think that was brought up at all today when I was reading through his Monday presser. So that might have just been a little bit of a immediately after the game ends gripe. It seemed like today he was pretty much like, yeah, we didn't play well, and
Yep.
we gave up 14 points on special teams, and the offense needs to be better. Defense he was pretty happy with, but
Yep.
um, yeah, I would have to agree with you a little bit. I don't love that that's the first thing you call out. There were probably other things that led to this 38-15 loss, but um, yeah, still understandable at least in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Defense, I think, again, they got dealt really crappy hands. That was the case in the Michigan game as well. They kept rising, they kept rising, they kept rising. But at some point, you've got to kind of look at the offense now, which has been so great, so dynamic, so explosive. You've played 6 straight bad quarters of football on offense. And as you have all this on the line now, and who knows where you end up and who you get to play and what it means, but you got to play better on offense if you want to really do anything with this season that you've had. And again, wildly successful, incredibly happy. But now that you're here and you have a seat at the table and all this stuff to play for, you can't just be happy with it. You really, really need to play better on offense to have any sort of hope, I think, for whatever the postseason may hold. So,
Yeah, I'm not
defense,
necessarily sure like this Saturday will tell us if we've got everything corrected and stuff, but I think we kind of have the advantage if you're looking in the trenches against Purdue. But I it does kind of feel like a little bit the game script or the defensive game plan script of how to attack us is out there right now.
right,
And this is where Sunseri, Shanahan, etc. need to make their money because it kind of feels easy to attack us right now if you've
right,
got the dudes to do it. And if we're talking Citrus Bowl or above, they're most likely going to have the dudes to do it.
right.
So we're definitely going to need to adjust and switch up how our protections and uh, yeah, like you had mentioned earlier, our defense runs a lot of stunts like that have been hurting us on offense. So you would think you'd have a good scout team to run against it, but definitely some changes need to be made.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think you're right about you're at a game here against Purdue now where I'm not going to say it's Sammy's turn where he goes a pick your score game. I don't think it's that severe, but the facts are you're playing a 1-10 Purdue team that is 0-8 in the Big Ten and has not won since they beat Indiana State in week 1. In a game you're favored essentially by 4 touchdowns in at night under the lights with basically a win and you're in the playoffs. I would hope, based on what you've seen all season, that you have a team that's really ready to play, a team that's really focused, really energetic, flying around, making plays. We'll see. I think they will do that. I'm confident that they will do that, but we'll see. But I think regardless of who you're playing against, I think it's a big week for the offense just to build some confidence and get back on track. And I think,
Yeah.
honestly, we've talked about how the schedule laid out really, really nicely for IU this season. I think that's another example of that here in week 12, or I guess game 12, week whatever, 15.
14. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you really need to establish some rhythm and some confidence. It's the same thing we said after the opener against FIU heading into the Western game. Obviously, level of competition, not up to what you're hopefully going to play for in the postseason. But I think really, really big week this week for especially the passing game on offense to kind of get back on track. But last thing for me on the defense from the Ohio State game, again, I thought played really, really well overall. Held Ohio State to just around 300 yards, which I think was their lowest output of the whole season. Some of that, of course, was because they had short fields. But when you look at how IU really limited the running attack for Ohio State, that's something we have not seen Indiana been able to do against the Michigans and Ohio States and Penn States in the last 10, 15 years. They really have not been able to control the line of scrimmage on defense for 4 quarters. And IU did that minus that run after the onside kick, which is what it is. I didn't honestly love the onside kick after you had that like optics touchdown to get back within 2 scores. You see the score, and I think 31-15 looks a lot better than 38-15. But I mean, if you take out which I'm not going, I'll just read it and then I'll do the full stats. But if you take out Henderson's 40-yard run at the very, very end of the 4th quarter there, you held him to 8 attempts for 28 yards. You held Quechon Judkins to 14 carries for 40 yards. So, I mean,
and those are stud running backs.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best duo. That's the best combo in the entire country in the offensive backfield. And you held them under 100 yards combined. I mean, that's really, really impressive and something we have not been able to see IU do for 4 quarters. And I think as you move forward into hopefully a run here, that's impressive. And teams have to game plan for IU's defensive line because they totally control the line of scrimmage on the defensive side of the ball, which is something I would not thought I was going to be saying at the start of the season.
No, I think when 14 weeks ago or so, when we were going through the position groups and we were saying concerned or confident, I think defensive line was one that frankly we were concerned about, and that's completely flipped. And yeah, if you're going into college football playoff games, I don't think you can underestimate how valuable it is to kind of say, I think whoever is lined up in the backfield against us, we can shut down. Now let's see whoever behind center is, if they can beat us. Hopefully, again, you get some more support from your offense as well. But you've seen phenomenal things from the defense in back-to-back weeks where the offense has struggled, and you get a win against Michigan and obviously the loss against Ohio State.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you said it, but Will Howard did his job on Saturday and wasn't necessarily killing IU down the field. He had some nice longer throws. His longest completion was 25 yards. But he was 22 of 26, 201 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick. That pick.
Pons again on that.
Pons had a nice tip. He had a couple nice plays on Smith, his old high school teammate, which was cool. Pons played a great game.
Jeremiah Smith had 3 catches for 34 yards. Like that, he essentially was a non-factor, and I mean that's a dude that 3-4 years from now people are going to be fighting for in fantasy football. Like that's
right. Yeah, so I mean, again, I'm just really, really impressed with what IU's defense was able to do. If you just give them a full field, we've seen it's been hard for teams to sustain drives and go all the way down the field because you have to string some bigger plays together because you're not getting chunk yardage on the ground. And I think you're going to need to lean on the defense against some of these better teams that you're hopefully playing. But again, it's going to totally come down to the offense. They have to play better than they have these last 6 quarters. And obviously, you can't give up 2 scores on special teams. But Nate, overall, I thought I've seen a lot of like, oh, they didn't belong, beat down, all this stuff. I think if you actually watch the game and kind of look into the numbers a little bit more than just that 38, which again is really why I wanted it to be 31. IU is not that far off, and I don't feel like we got totally outclassed. We definitely got our teeth kicked in. Offense couldn't move the ball. Rourke finished with 68 yards passing. I mean, that's definitely terrible. Sacked 5 times, should have been probably 10 sacks. But honestly, I don't feel like we were out athleted or out duded in this game, which is normally how it goes. We score early, and then Ohio State ends up with 38 at halftime, and then they run the clock out in the second half. I didn't really feel like that was the case on Saturday, regardless of the final score. I just think IU played honestly pretty poorly, especially on offense and special teams.
Yeah, and I mean, this is an Ohio State team that was put together, assembled, bought, if you want to say, to outdo teams, and it was bought to outdo teams that are the Georgias, Michigans, Alabamas of the world. We aren't even considered in that. So it's huge to go into that and feel like, yeah, maybe you're building something, maybe a few things go this way instead of the way they did go, and it could be an entirely different conversation we're having. Yeah, they're a good team. I think they're going to be one of, if it was still the 4-team college football playoff, they'd be in it, and they'd be right up there as potentially a favorite to win it all. And we had to go play them on the road, and with all this hype, and suddenly we got their full attention, unlike we typically do, and we weren't too far off.
No, yeah, great. They definitely won. Definitely were the better team. Signetti was the first one to say that when he sat down. Yeah, I mean, definitely really, really talented roster, really talented team. And I think right now, actually, if you look on Vegas, I think they're the betting odds favorite to win the college football playoff. But yeah, I mean, I don't have that bad of a taste in my mouth like I have normally when we do our podcasts or when we've done them in the past years. It's basically been like, all right, like hope no one gets hurt and we play a bunch of freshmen. And this week I'm like, you know what, that definitely ticked me off how poorly we played. But I didn't come out of this game on Saturday night, Sunday morning, and into Monday here today. I didn't come out of that being like, we're not even close. This is terrible. We're never going to be good. Like we're a good team. And two things can be true at the same time. And that's really what's bugged me about the discourse online. One, you got beat, and you got beat handily. Yes. Two, IU's still a good team. And I think both of those things can be true. So now the playoff committee discourse will be, oh, what a, easy win for Ohio State against a top 5 team. But which one, but if we kept it close, it would have been, oh, Ohio State stinks. So you got to pick one. IU can be a good team and still lose. I think that's okay.
I really think if you go into the national media discourse, all the stuff we've been reading and fighting against these past couple weeks, it's kind of forgotten about that with a 12-team playoff, there will be teams that you think are just good, not great, that make it.
Yeah.
And I think Indiana fits into that realm right now of we are a good team, not a great team. That is perfectly okay. In the past, that's not okay. When there's only 4 teams, or even if you go back further and it's the BCS and there's only 2, then you had to be perfect. You had to have every single part of your game looking pretty much flawless. If you lost, things were probably over for your entire season. And that's not the case anymore. You get 12 teams in, and I think at this point, when you look at the college football landscape, I think Indiana deserves one of those 12 spots.
Yeah. Yeah, I still don't see how I understand the argument. I definitely get it. But as someone that's grown up as like a group of 5 mid-major guy, I don't understand with 12 teams, like, why are you trying to push a good story and probably an 11-win team out of a 12-team playoff? For me, it doesn't make any sense. If you want to complain about something, you should be complaining about the fact that Boise State is probably going to get a bye or Miami is going to get a bye, not that Indiana is going to get into the playoff. I think if you want to point your outrage at something, I think you should be directing your outrage at that and not that they decided to just do the top 4 teams get the buys. And you could still do the auto bid for group of 5. I'm 150% in favor of that. Definitely in favor of all the conference champs getting a slot. But if you want to be angry at something, I think you should be mad at how they set the bracket up, not that Indiana is in the bracket. That's my 2 cents on it. And we'll see. Like tomorrow, the new rankings will come out. IU's obviously going to fall. The question is, how far do you drop a team that loses on the road to the number 2 team in the country, who now we have the best loss in the country, just so everybody,
Huge.
Everyone knows. I guess maybe Ohio State has a better loss than us.
Finally got one of those quality losses.
Quality loss. We got that the SEC loves.
Q1 loss.
Q1 loss. That's right. Like, how far do you drop a team that was number 5, that is 10-1 with a great scoring margin, all this good stuff, that Ward Manuel, the chair of the selection committee, said they watch every game to see how every group played. IU's defense definitely showed that Indiana belongs as a top team in the country. This isn't we got our doors blown off and we were running the clock out to make the game go slower. I mean, the defense showed up and played really well, especially
if anything, we should have run the clock out a little more than we did.
So I mean, we'll see where we fall. We'll definitely fall. I'm expecting us to be 9th or 10th, somewhere in that range. But now if you're getting into the evaluating resume stage, does Penn State really have a better resume than Indiana? Does Miami have a better resume than Indiana? Like all these other teams that everyone's mad at Indiana for, I'm like, why don't you look at Texas's resume or Penn State's or Miami? We'll see. And does IU deserve to host a home game? I don't know. We'll see how far we drop tomorrow night. But at this point, I think you're still squarely in the field, especially with what happened across the country after IU lost, which was
we couldn't have had a better Saturday night of just pretty much every single thing that we were rooting for after Indiana lost happened for us. So that was very nice. And I'll go back to a point you had made. One of my least favorite discourses I've seen is the beat writer of a similarly small school. You should be all in on Indiana because if your team ever gets into the same spot, you're going to be fighting the fight that we are fighting. So why not just fight it now for us so that you can get a little bit of a precedent? This is the very first year of this 12-team playoff. If you can get a little bit of a historical trend of, this team made it in. Now my team in 2027 that has a very similar resume, they should also be in. I don't understand we can rule them out. They're not that good. Don't need them. They haven't, we don't recognize that logo on the side of the helmet. That one doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, agree. And again, another resume team for me. You want to talk about a resume? I want you to look at Notre Dame's resume and you tell me why they deserve to be 100% in the field and ahead of Indiana. That just, I don't know. I guess we should have lost to Ohio State in September and then everybody would have just forgotten about it by now. I guess that's the recipe, is you just lose super early so no one cares by the time the rankings come out. But I don't know. I would love to play Notre Dame. I think what will happen, honestly, is I think they will they'll try to put the Big Ten teams against each other. So I don't think they want to set it up for Big Ten teams to be knocking off the people that they want to win. So I think I could definitely see us playing Penn State and Notre Dame getting SMU. I think we're still a ways away from that. We have some more games to start or play, but yeah, we'll see where IU lands tomorrow. We'll have a lot on that, obviously, as it's super, super critical. But it's bucket week, Nate.
Yeah.
And IU kind of has to refocus and recalibrate on a game where it always means something and you always want to win it. I don't think anybody had it was you win and you're in the playoff in the offseason. But basically that's what IU has right now is a playoff game.
Yeah. And, the big argument of the 12-team playoff is maybe the regular season would matter a little more. Suddenly we're in the thick of that conversation of the regular season does really matter for us come Saturday. And obviously this is an entirely new team. You know, Sig was even asked today in the presser, like, does your team really know what this IU versus Purdue kind of game means? And he's like, it's a rivalry game. Like my team knows. But yeah, we haven't won it since 2019. This is the year after I graduated, so like, unfortunately, that's a long time ago. Um, it's a win you absolutely have to have. It's a win you have to have that you look good in, because if you somehow make this a close game, I think that gives a little more ammo to those that are against us, um, to use when you're in that concert in that conference room and figuring out, you know, do we take Indiana or do we take XYZ? Um, you know, it's what have you done for me recently? So hopefully what we've done for him recently is put up a, 49-6 win.
That sounds pretty good. That's a good score. Yeah, Purdue, I mean, obviously they're on a 10-game losing streak, 0-8 in the league. They're showing a little bit of life at the end of the season. They could have beat Illinois. They played definitely better against Michigan State last Friday. So, I mean, you're not looking at probably the worst team of all time. I mean, they're bad. Like, they're definitely really bad. They're giving up like 5.5 yards a carry, which is something IU will definitely exploit. IU has the better player at just about every position, better position group at every position, and playing better all season, all that good stuff. Rivalry game, like Purdue will definitely be playing super hard. Last chance playing football for a lot of guys. Last chance to put tape on for a lot of guys. Um, so we'll see. IU definitely has to come out. Purdue will probably be super fired up to start the game. Um, but yeah, I mean, you're 10-1. I hope it's a great crowd. I'm worried people are not going to show as strong as they've been showing all season. But I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm curious to see that.
yeah,
I
packing the
know
rock
we've struggled
Saturday.
in the past getting students to come back early for
Yeah,
Thanksgiving break, but
right,
we've also struggled when we're 4-7 at the time, and or 2-8 or whatever, and not necessarily the position we find ourselves in today. But
yeah,
yeah, I hope it's a raucous crowd. I hope we come out really firing, and I hope we kind of force Purdue to beat themselves, because we've seen them do that time and time again this season. The Michigan State game this weekend, it kind of felt like, yeah, that easily could have swung their way, but they found a way to beat themselves.
yeah. Absolutely. So, yeah, I think crowd will be interesting. Don't want to just always talk about crowd discourse, but yeah, hopefully the night game helps students get back in town earlier. But yeah, like regardless of, I don't want to hear the elements, I don't want to hear night game, whatever. Indiana has a chance to go 8-0 at home and finish an 11-win regular season. And I would be absolutely fired up for that. And especially when it's cold out, you just bundle up, seats are comfier, you get to stand. It's pretty sweet. So IU has just a massive, massive game on Saturday. We'll have a ton on that throughout the week. Um, but Nate, I guess final thoughts here to wrap us up. IU falls for the first time. They sit at 10-1 and the 10th best team in the country. If you asked people to sign up for that, they would have said, how much money do you want, or what kind of drugs are you taking before the season?
Yeah. I mean, it's really I guess it was a perspective, 3:30 p.m. onwards on Saturday, because yeah, you and I are both subject to being very upset about Indiana football losses and carrying them much further along in our personal lives than we should. And I
Well,
don't yeah, well, again, we've been told this. I don't
yeah,
think, yeah, we
right.
don't feel
Fair,
it.
fair. Yeah,
Yeah. But I think I kind of got to a point Saturday night that I was like, it's bucket week. We're 10-1. We just didn't play our best game against a team that has a very good chance to go on and win the national championship. So I I think I have kind of had the mind shift to enjoy it, and now go completely flip and beat up on a Purdue team that has gotten the best of you the last 4 years, and
yeah.
now you absolutely need it to boost your resume one last time and finish at 11-1. And I saw today that this is the first time we were at 10 wins. Purdue has been at 10 wins before, but neither of us have ever gotten to 11 wins. So uh, this would be a big opportunity for us to be the first to 11.
Nice. That's a cool stat there. And I want people to like remember, you I think 3 or 4 years ago, Donovan McCulley was the quarterback and got hurt. IU was playing Grant Grimmel, I think 3 seasons ago, probably 5th string, 6th string quarterback. Purdue clowned you last year in a game that you totally blew, like they always did. And now you're 10-1, and you're playing pretty much as well as anyone in the country. You've been so fun to watch. You've been so uplifting, so energetic. Just exactly what we needed, pretty much at a time where it was make it or break it. Honestly, are you gonna play football and are you gonna be for real, or are you gonna decide you're just not gonna invest in it and kind of be done with it? Probably not that exaggerated, but essentially that's what it felt like. And pretty much since you lost the game against Ohio State, IU has won both days with all the losses on Saturday, and then Sunday the big extent, or some of the stuff comes out about his contract set Sunday night and into today with $11 million for his assistant pool, all this stuff. I mean, I think if you win on Saturday, you finish 11-1. Not that you're going to go 11-1 every year, but I think you've kind of reframed the standard and the expectation that this is a team that should be near the top of the Big Ten every season and challenging. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, you have to play the game, you have to win the game, you have to look good in the game. But IU is in, at this point, honestly, the best possible situation that you could have even imagined or dreamt of before the season started. And when we did I'm going to go back and watch it. I might tweet it out, but when we did our preseason projection and storylines, it was, us two and TJ and Sammy. We all had our various predictions and a bold prediction, which, somebody was actually right about. And I don't think anyone picked 8 wins. I think most of us were 6 or 7. I think maybe Sammy had 8, maybe, but he typically leans higher. And we basically were like, this season, the goal should be to establish an identity, show recruits what you're about, get the fan base going a little bit, get the trophies back. And here we are with basically a win-in game for the playoffs. So I hope that kind of sets the scene for everybody. One loss, I don't really want that to shift us into doom and gloom mode. It's been outstanding and so fun and so memorable, and it's been so great. And I really hope everybody shows up on Saturday and kind of gives the guys a proper send off. But who knows? Maybe we'll play another game at the Rock.
Yeah, this is true.
That will do it this evening for After the Dust Settles. Nate, thanks very much. We'll have lots of stuff on the site this week as we preview the bucket game. We'll have, again, a ton of stuff on playoff rankings tomorrow and what that means for IU. And overall, just lots of stuff as IU heads into the bucket week at home against Purdue.